Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Coach Cast with Chad Birger. I'm your host, Chad Birger. I'm joined again by University of Sioux Falls head football coach Jim Glogowski. Hi, Coach Glo. How are you doing this week?
Doing fantastic, man. Always good after a win.
Yes. Well, you mentioned after a win, coming off the big win for the University of Sioux Falls Cougars over the St. Thomas Tommies on Thursday night. The Cougars prevailed 34-13 in a nice weather-delayed game. Didn't start on time. Lots of different stuff going on. Coach Glow's still a little tired this morning from getting back so late. But 34-13, we'll kind of go through some of the scoring summary. The scoring started off with 13-16 left, just a little under 2 minutes into the game. Jacob Wildermuth for St. Thomas caught a 25-yard pass from Tatioka. Two-play drive. We'll get into some of the highlights here on that, putting the Tommies up 7-0 right away. Then, after a couple ensuing possessions, the Cougars were able to sustain a 6.5-minute drive, and Cam Dean punched it in from 1 yard out. There was a 2-point conversion for the Cougars on that one, putting USF up 8-7 at the end of the first quarter. The second quarter started off, was a little bit slow, punting back and forth. I know, Coach Glow, you're a defensive guy. You probably appreciated some of that stuff. As someone watching the game, whatever. It is what it is. But USF was finally able to put some points on the board right at the end of the first half with a 30-yard Nick Hernandez field goal to wrap it up there in the first half, putting the Cougars up 11-7 at halftime. Then the second half kicked off. USF was able to kind of dominate the ground game in the second half. Had a couple nice drives through the air, picked things up, and then Glogowski was able to punch in a 3-yard touchdown run. St. Thomas did respond a little bit later with a 6-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown by C.J. Warren, and that made it a pretty close game. It was actually 18-13 at that point, so St. Thomas decided to go for two, and during the 2-point conversion, Brendan Holt was able to recover a Tommy's fumble, 86 yards, and return it for a 2-point conversion defensively, which put the Cougars up 20-13. From that point, the Cougars never really looked back, dominating the line of scrimmage. A couple of over 7-minute drives in the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter, both capped off by Dylan Rudnigan touchdown runs, leading to that final score of 34-13. So, Coach Glow, let's go ahead and bring you in. Let's talk a little bit about some things that you were pleased with from the game on Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that stuck out was just how we kind of handled the situation overall. Obviously we took off on Wednesday afternoon, got up there Wednesday night, did a little bit of a walk through at the stadium. And then, Thursday you get up, you got a 6 o'clock kickoff, you're at the hotel. And so you're kind of, getting through the day, and we had our pregame meal at 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, and then took off to the stadium at 3. And on the way to the stadium, I actually got a phone call from their assistant AD talking about the weather. And obviously we'd watched the weather, but they were talking about some pretty major weather events with some hail and stuff like that. And so there was talk of pushing the game back, and even a little bit of talk of what if we can't get it in? What's the last drop dead point we would kick the game off at, and or potentially move the game to Friday. And so, of course, that wasn't something we were very interested in doing. We'd obviously just started class this week and wanted to get back for class on Friday, but weather is what it is. And by the time we got to the stadium, it was about 3:45, and obviously we'd already had a meeting, and we were going to push the game back to at least 8. So you get there, and you plan on getting there about 2.5 hours early, and as it shakes out, you're sitting there for almost 4 or 5 hours, with no food and eating at 2 o'clock with about 70 starving players. And so we did some things where I've never done before. We scrambled. There was a Target locally, went and got some beef jerky and some cheese sticks and some fruit, and tried to keep our kids tied over and just let them hang out and get on their phones and watch college football that had started across the country. And then about 7 o'clock, they let us kind of start getting warmed up, and we went out there and took the field and ended up kicking off at 8. So, all in all, that was probably the thing that sticks out the most, is how we handled the trip, how we handled the adversity. And if you remember last year, we had somewhat of a similar situation against Augustana at home, where there was also kind of a crazy deal, a beautiful day, but a weather delay. And so that kind of was something we leaned back on and said, hey, if Augie was able to play well coming out of that delay on the road, we certainly can do the same here. And we kind of learned from that environment. And fortunately, we're able to come out and certainly didn't start very strong, but we finished strong.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Our graphics department was really busy this weekend and was able to come up with some actual video clip highlights. They're not the greatest, picture quality themselves, but we do have some of those. We realize some of the people on here are listening to the podcast, so we'll try to describe what's happening. But if you're watching on YouTube, we did get these graphics courtesy of the University of St. Thomas Athletics Department and Midcoast Sports Plus. So start off, Cougars get the opening kickoff, third play of the game. Cam Dean drops back and throws an interception.
Just a little miscommunication, I thought, and obviously we're trying to get the ball in the air on third down and get the first, and just unfortunately left the ball back inside and Carter cut out, and it just kind of was one of those things that was unfortunate.
And the Tommies returned it to about the 10-yard line. Brandon Smith, the defender, was pushed out of bounds, but then there was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, so that actually pushed them back to the 25-yard line. First play they ran, didn't get anything. I thought, honestly, I'm going to kind of editorialize here a little bit, Coach, but as big as their offensive line was, when I was watching the film, your defensive line didn't seem to be getting pushed around by those guys.
No, we take a lot of pride in trying to be physical, and we had talked about that all through camp. I think that first drive by them was kind of indicative of the whole game. Obviously they end up getting a personal foul on the interception return, and really proud of our kids for keeping their composure. And I think if you look at the stats, statistically speaking, they kind of hurt themselves with some penalties, a couple personal fouls, and I thought our kids kind of handled that really well, and that helped to kind of play into our favor as the game wore on. And then obviously they did get the touchdown here, but we ended up challenging it, using the old challenge flag, the first one of the year, and kind of took a shot at that, thinking he maybe didn't have control of the ball. And to be honest with you, after watching the video back after this play, it was a lot closer than I thought it was. I threw the flag because I was like, hey, we got to at least make sure we give ourselves a chance to slow the game down and, kind of regroup. And maybe the guy bobbled it. But after watching it back on the way back home on the bus, it was clear that he did drag his foot. But it was questionable, that's for sure.
Well, as I was watching it, I was kind of wondering what you were doing there too. But yeah, here's the 25-yard Takioka to Jacob Wildermuth touchdown. The PAT was good, so you're not even 2 minutes into the game, and you guys trail 7-0. On the road, Division I opponent. You could have folded right there, but the Cougars didn't. Came back, played some pretty solid football for the rest of the first half. Then what ended up happening was the Cougars actually, towards the end of the first quarter, went on a 13-play, 6.5-minute drive. And here's the play. It was a handoff to the left to Christian Nash. And you can see here, if you're watching online, Nash goes into the line, and all of a sudden the ball comes popping out, and it goes right into the hands of Cam Dean, and he scoops it up and goes untouched into the end zone.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate, obviously, but we got the right bounce, and it just, as that stuff kind of goes, you play hard, you hustle. He's kid's trying to stretch and make a little extra yardage and score the touchdown, and it pops out. And quite frankly, we just lucked out. The ball bounced into our hands, and we ended up capitalizing on it.
So then the ensuing PAT, the Cougars lined up in the old swinging gate type formation, and Bennett Brick is the guy, behind the center on this one. And he must have seen something in the formation that you guys talked about during the week. But what he decided to do was have the snapper snap him the ball. And then you will see that he ends up finding Mark Leonard coming across the middle and just gives him an old shovel pass. And Leonard hauls it in for 2 points.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we did that quite a bit when I was at Minnesota State, and something that we spent a lot of time on. But essentially, it's just something that you force the defense to prepare for that doesn't take a whole lot of time on our part. And the idea is he just basically saw that they had an overloaded side and we were going to run the football. And if he has the ability to tuck it up to the left, he does. Otherwise, he can always throw it on the release of the tight end. And, it was kind of let's put it this way. That's not how we practiced it, but the kid made a great play. And more importantly, we feel like, guys like Mark or some of our better players, give him a chance to make a play, and he did. And, Bennett's a kid that's a redshirt freshman quarterback, and he's got a bright future ahead of him, but that was a pretty impressive play.
Yeah. Second quarter, as we mentioned, it was a defensive struggle. There were a couple highlights in there. I didn't put them in here. I didn't want to make this thing go 45 minutes long. But the first half ended up with a 30-yard Nicholas Hernandez field goal. Not much pressure on that one, right through the uprights. Go into halftime with that lead, as we mentioned earlier. So up 11-7 at halftime. What are you telling the guys in the halftime locker room at that point, Coach?
Well, obviously the game was tight, but I felt like, man, we had the ball on their side of the field the whole first half. It felt like, after that first drive. And my concern, to be honest with you, was the inability to put the ball in the end zone and put points on the board throughout the whole first half. And so I think the offensive guys did a nice job of at least finishing out the half on a positive. That was huge. But I thought we had some opportunities that we missed on. I think there was a 4th down stop that they got on us and that type of stuff. But overall, I felt really good. Even though the score was tight, I felt like we had some opportunities that if we could just capitalize on a couple drives and finish some drives out, that we could create some distance between us.
Yeah. So let's come back to the highlights here. Second half, Cougars came out and obviously did execute on some of those things. Here's a third quarter pass from Camden Dean to Mark Leonard for 31 yards down the sideline. Leonard had a good game. We'll go over some of the stats here in a little bit. And then on the ensuing couple plays here, Dean hits Carter Slykehouse, horse collar tackle at the end of that one to set the Cougars up for a 1st and goal at the 3-yard line. And then from the 3-yard line, Matt Glogowski runs it in off the left side, virtually untouched. Cougars extend the lead. Now it's 18-7 after that one.
Yeah, feeling pretty good. Obviously offensively, we were able to generate some offense and finish a drive. And, give credit to the guys up front. They did a really nice job of kind of staying the plan. That's a pretty talented defense. And they do a lot of things where they twist, stunt, and move and blitz quite a bit. And we kind of knew going in that it was going to be a little bit of a feast or famine. And when they got us. But when we were able to chip them, we got some big plays. And, give credit to Cam for hanging in there and Mark making some plays. And Carter was big all night long, too. So just proud of our kids for being able to capitalize on the opportunities presented themselves.
All right. Got the ball a couple possessions later, and Cam did get sacked from the blind side. Ball squirted out, and C.J. Warren recovered it for a 6-yard touchdown for the Tommies. So far, this is their second score, one of them defensive, the other one off of a turnover. So their defense was the main reason that was keeping them in the game at this point. But they decided to go for 2 after this one because the score was 18-13, as I mentioned earlier. They wanted to cut it to a 3-point game. The first 2-point attempt, you guys got called for holding. And so they lined it up from like the 1-yard line, essentially, and decided to do a little toss. And what happened was there was a little fumble on the toss here, and Brendan Holt comes shooting in, destroys the ball carrier, picks it up, and whoop, 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 makes a few cuts here and there. And next thing you know, he's off to the races for, I think it was officially an 86-yard 2-point conversion. And the guys were fired up at the end of this one, weren't they, Coach?
Yeah, it's I'd love to tell you that we practice that, but we don't. It's funny because Brendan was actually a pretty good running back coming out of high school in Wisconsin, and we actually kind of tinkered with him at running back, about last spring I think it was, and just ended up going back to linebacker. But pretty instinctive play, not only to shove the kid down, but then to grab the ball, and then he stiff arms right behind him because he just felt pressure. But it was our own guy, I think it was Kane. He stiff arms him, and then there's just the one guy to beat, and so. I mean, obviously, that's a huge point in the game. To your point, it's going to be a 3-point game if they convert that. Instead, it's a 7-point game. And now you feel like I always feel like if you're ahead by a score, that you never feel good about giving up a touchdown, but you're not losing the lead. And so anytime you stay a touchdown ahead, and that was huge. That really gave us some confidence because all the wind in their sails is taken away because we returned that for 2 points, and ends up being a 5-point swing, and that's a huge part of the game.
All right, Coach. Well, let's head back over here. A few more highlights to go through in the fourth quarter. The Cougars were able to capitalize, as I said, on one of those drives, and Dylan Rudnigan was able to punch his first touchdown of the game in to start off the fourth quarter. And this one put you up 2 scores, so you had to be feeling a little bit better about that. And then the defense was able to kind of take over. Here's the Maloa Wells interception against the Tommies, and that kind of set you guys up for essentially running out the clock. And so the Cougars were able to drive out another 7+ minute drive later on in the fourth quarter, capitalized by this Dylan Rudnigan untouched touchdown number 2. And
yeah,
then,
I mean, just really two pretty impressive drives there. To your point, eating up the clock, and when you have to win football games, and you got to run the football to kind of get rid of the clock and take the air out of the ball, as we like to say, you got to be able to run it when they know you're going to run it. And I thought our guys did a really good job of just really pounding the ball and getting chunk after chunk and eating up that clock. And I think at the end of the day, there was 40 minutes of time of possession roughly for us, and they had it for about 20. So anytime you're doubling up time of possession, you got to feel pretty good about your chances of winning.
And then the best formation in all of football, if you're running it, we'll go ahead and go after the crowd shot here. The best formation in football is the victory formation. You guys were able to seal out the game with the victory formation, taking a knee on that last play and, closing the deal against a Division I opponent, the Cougars' second ever win against a D1 opponent in school history. What does that mean to you, Coach?
Well, I know I've heard a lot about the winning streak they had and all that. And, a lot of that stuff's in the past, just like our record last year's in the past. And as I told the kids, after the game is that, we don't see ourselves as a 3-8 team, and we see ourselves as a better team than that. And we've got to prove it. And I thought we did that for one night. We've got 10 more nights or 10 more days to prove that. The fact that we won the game is the most important thing. All the other stuff had nothing to do with us. It was just, to be honest with you, it was probably timing and luck that we ended up walking into that place when they had won that many games in a row. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to say it. It's probably better for people outside the program to talk about it. But, we went up there and I think we beat a solid football team, and we'll see, in November how good they really were and how good we really are. So there's a lot of football left. It's just one game. Certainly excited. I think our kids were excited about the win, but more importantly for me, coming off last year, going through the offseason, going through recruiting, getting a couple transfers, really working to get better and to have a better product. That's something that I thought we did for the most part for one night, right? And so moving forward, getting back to work this week and getting ready for a tough Northern State football team because, at the end of the day, USD scholarship football program, top 5 program in the country, a little bit different than St. Thomas, a non-scholarship Division I. Yes, they're both Division I, but a little bit different in that regard. And so I don't know if you can score compare and all that kind of stuff and look at all that jazz. That's all fine to talk about, but more importantly, we did win. We were able to do the things you need to do to win a football game, and we'll see if we can do that again on Saturday night. Are you teeing up
All
the
right,
defense?
Coach. Well, let's go ahead and take a look.
I thought you were looking for the defensive clips that we had. I didn't know if we even played defense after all those highlights. A lot of offense on there.
Yeah. So there were a couple of great defensive plays that were there during the game. So we'll talk about a few of those as we get here to the stats and the player of the game. But one of the things that I really noticed is you guys did a much better job this year of putting pressure on the quarterback when he was trying to pass. Those defensive backs did a great job of knocking balls away, breaking up passes. And then just, you guys talk about things like fit in the run game, but it felt like there were never any huge gaps for the running backs for St. Thomas to run through in the game.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you're trying to have explosive plays on offense and limit them on defense. And I think the longest run they had maybe was 10 yards or something like that. And so for us, versus a football team that really likes to run the football and takes a lot of pride, and they were, you said it earlier, they were enormous up front, big tight ends, big physical offensive line, and a fullback. Not many people have a fullback anymore. And so for us to be able to kind of gap everything out and make sure the guys are in the right place, and more importantly, I thought the pace at which that we made those fits. So in other words, the defensive guys were playing on their side of the ball versus catching blocks on our side of the ball. And that was a big emphasis this spring, this fall camp, of making sure that we weren't sitting there catching blocks, but we were more attacking blocks. And so some of the things they did offensively with the 2 tight ends and the heavy sets, run game stuff, that kind of allowed us to kind of be physical and try to match their physicality, which I thought we did. And all in all, I give a lot of credit to Coach Cap and Coach McCall and Coach Johnson, along with Kylan Dickerson and Jacob Tooth. Those guys did a nice job of coaching those guys up. And certainly it's only one game. I keep saying that it's just one game, but for one night, I thought we showed a lot of progress.
And then I don't know if you guys watched this on film, but there was a play, I think it was in the second quarter, where Andy Henson kind of shot through a gap and knocked the running back's helmet off. I wasn't able to clip that one for highlights, but that was a phenomenal hit. Did you guys see that one?
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually went back and watched the TV copy on the way back home, and they slow motioned it. And the end zone camera got a great shot of that. And Midco, it's pretty cool to be on Midco and be able to be on that provider. But yeah, it was a pretty clean play, and I thought he had a phenomenal game. And he's just a redshirt freshman and 6'2", 230, and I thought he really dominated inside out. He had the strip sack and all that. So the physicality of our guys was what probably stood out the most on defense. We certainly didn't play perfect. We made some mistakes, and I'm sure Coach Caruso at St. Thomas, he'll tell you the same thing, that they made some mistakes. But as far as the aggressiveness and the physicality and just sheer tackling, I thought was better. And you never really know in that first game out, because you don't do a lot of live tackling during fall camp anymore because you can't, right? And so with that being said, I thought our kids, for the most part, pursued the ball really well. I thought we made up for some of the missed tackles with our pursuit and our hustle. And then when we had opportunities to make plays in space, I thought our corners and our safeties really tackled well too. And they were very physical. It wasn't just dragging guys down. It was running through guys. And that's what we want to see.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and pull some statistics up from the game. As I mentioned earlier, total yardage wise, Cougars kind of dominated, 393 to 172. Rushing was really the difference, 204 yards total rushing yards for the Cougars versus 22 for the Tommies. Totally not what a lot of us expected going into the game, but you guys stepped up big time in that game. Penalties were also a big factor in the game. The Cougars only had 5 penalties for 32 yards, whereas the Tommies had 12 for 103. And it felt like that second half was kind of dragging on for a little while. It was pretty late. It was after 10 o'clock at night, and the refs just kept throwing flag after flag after flag. But, it was what it was.
Yeah, and to your point, that's a big thing to me. I think that speaks volumes, and that's something we have to get better at too. We talk about being better on defense and offense, but the penalties, right, and third down conversions, those are probably two things that stick out to me the most. Is we were really efficient on third down, and fortunately, we really caused them some problems on third down. And then the penalty yards, there's a couple personal fouls in there. Those are backbreakers, and you just can't do that. And I jumped a couple guys in the sideline because they were getting into some pushing and shoving. They were kind of getting baited into that a little bit, and we just can't play that game, right? And that's something as a program we talk about and how we carry ourselves. And it's not just about picking up your locker and all that stuff. It's also about, like, how do you carry yourself on the field and how do you respond? Because, even at the Division II level, we're going to go into some hostile environments where there's some people that are going to say some things that we don't like, and you can't just haul off and slug them, so we don't want to do that. And so I was proud that we kept our composure and kept the mistakes down to some minimum stuff, some delay games and stuff like that. That's typically part of the first game as you're trying to get your timing down. But for the most part, I was pleased with that part of the game.
Yeah, I think 2 of those penalties were on the second offensive drive, just, things like that. So you did mention the success rate on third down, 10 for 20 on third down, and then 2 for 3 on fourth downs. So, Mark Leonard caught a big one early and just do a good job of, converting when the Cougars needed it.
Yeah, it seems like even last year we find ourselves in a lot of these weird fourth down scenarios where it's 4th and 7, 8, 9, 10, but you're on the 35-yard line, and so you don't really want to punt because there's not that much to gain really. And field goal is probably not realistic with the rain and all that at 50 yards. So, that big conversion we had to Mark was big time, which is funny because the 4th and 1 we didn't get. We got tackled from behind. And then the 4th and 11, we converted, So I don't really look at the yardage as much. And I always ask Coach Litters, hey, do you got a play that you feel like can get the first down if you know what you're going to get from them defensively? And so people say it's a big gamble. But if I know that they're going to be in zone coverage and we've got Mark Leonard driving across on a dig route, I feel pretty good about Mark catching that football. So try to put the ball in the hands of our playmakers and let them decide the game versus, sometimes as coaches, you can outthink yourself and say, we better kick it here, or you better punt it here. But more or less, let the guys decide on the field.
Well, let's look at a few individual statistics. This is from the University of Sioux Falls Cougars website, usfcougars.com. Cam Dean finished the game 17 for 29 for 189 yards. He did have the 1 interception. Dylan Rudnigan led the rushing attack, 23 carries for 70 yards, net of 67. He had a couple of lost yards on there, but had the 2 touchdowns that we saw earlier. Cam Dean also had 65 yards rushing on 16 attempts, and he had the 1 touchdown as well. As far as receiving wise, Carter Slykehouse led the charge, 6 catches for 54 yards. Mark Leonard had 2 big ones for 50. He also caught that 2-point conversion early on in the game. Adonis Hutchinson had 2 catches for 39 yards, and Dylan Rudnigan also had 2 receptions for 25. Defensively, let's take a look at some of the defensive stats, because otherwise Coach will be mad at me here. Matt Gearing was the leading tackler on the squad with 7 total tackles, 4 solos, including a half tackle for loss. Andy Henson had 4 tackles, but 2 of them were for loss, plus he had a sack, which turned out to be a forced fumble, a strip sack, if you will, which gave the Cougars possession in the third quarter. Preston Yonke also had 4 tackles for the Cougars, and Joseph Sapp had 4 as well. You can see one of the things that stood out to me was you guys were spending a lot more time in the offensive backfield the other night. You know, the tackles for losses and sack numbers are up there this year. There was another sack by Alex Maxim, too. And so, you know, I think last year total you ended up with 7 sacks, if I remember correctly. This year you've already got 2 in the first game.
Yeah, don't remind me. That was gross last year. We could not get to the quarterback for anything. And I think this year we actually had an intentional grounding where we probably had another sack. The pressure was there all night long, and we didn't really blitz all that much. But when we did, we got home. We were bringing 4 most of the night, and we just felt like if we could push the ball wide and outside and take away the downfield, you know, vertical down the field type stuff down the middle of the field, we felt pretty good about our chances.
Well, Coach, I'm going to go ahead. We do have a sponsor that we want to take a look at here or share this year. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get this pulled up here. I'm a one-man graphics team right now, but we'll see if we can get this pulled up. We do have an Atomic Wings player of the game. And so this week, the Atomic Wing player of the game on offense is Cam Dean. On defense, we've got Andy Henson. And special teams, we've got Scott Dixon. Those are the Atomic Wings players of the game. Go ahead and talk about those guys a little bit.
Yeah, and there was a lot of candidates, certainly on offense. Dylan Rudnigan, Mark Leonard, Adonis Hutchinson made 2 incredible catches. Carter Slykehouse played really well, the offensive line. But I thought, you know, Cam made some good decisions. And he really kind of kept the ball moving down the field on some key scrambles, and that was really nice to see. I thought Andy's a kid that, as a redshirt freshman, played from a technique standpoint, physical, violent football, and was all over the field and did a really nice job. And that strip sack was a really nice job of staying square off the blitz, which is something we worked on through fall camp. So that was good to see. And then finally, Scott Dixon. I mean, the guy's a true freshman, right? And he comes out there and he punts the ball really well, had no mishaps, and then had to step in when we had a little bit of an injury to Nick Hernandez. He had to step in and fill in for him on kickoff and extra point. So at one point, I realized that Nick I thought he'd go out there for the field goal late in the game. We ended up going for it, but I think Cam scrambled on 4th and 4. We were going to kick it, but I didn't want to put Scott out there with the rain and all that as a freshman in his first, field goal attempt. So we ended up getting him an extra point instead. But really just proud of that young man, along with Blaze Marchant. He was another kid as a freshman that snapped every snap, long snaps. And then, of course, Hank Brown played at wide receiver. So 3 true freshmen got their first college snaps, and that was really good to see those guys step up. But yeah, those 3 guys went a little bit above and beyond what we expected, and that was good to see.
All right, Coach. Well, as I mentioned, that's our sponsor for this season. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can, highlight our sponsor a little bit. So we'll put them up on the screen. Atomic Wings. Attention, Cougar fans. There's a new favorite spot for wings in Sioux Falls. Atomic Wings is now open at 1502 East 69th Street in Sioux Falls, just north of the USF Stadium. Atomic Wings offers customers fresh, never frozen, natural and hormone-free chicken wings, hand-tossed in 14 proprietary sauces, a classic menu, a welcome dining experience, and a commitment to quality. Come watch sports and enjoy wings and a cold one at our self-serve beer station. Atomic Wings in Sioux Falls will also have the NFL Sunday ticket this year if you want to enjoy some football on Sundays as well. The menu includes traditional wings, boneless wings, chicken tenders, sandwiches, flatbreads, and salads. Also choose waffle fries, onion rings, mac and cheese, jalapeno poppers, mozzarella sticks, tater tots, or sweet potato fries as a side. And don't forget the dessert. Deep fried Oreos or a Nutella waffle are options you can't get everywhere. There's something for everyone in the entire family at Atomic Wings. Their website is atomicwings.com. You can order online or come in. It's located at 69th Street, just north of the USF football stadium. Perfect location for pregame tailgates or postgame celebrations with friends and family. Join Atomic Wings in Sioux Falls. All right, Coach, have you tried Atomic Wings yet?
I did actually. I actually snuck over there this weekend, and it was outstanding. So good that I actually got 10 wings to go last night on my way home to take home and watch the game last night. So I've actually hit it up twice in the last week, and I'm telling you right now, it could be explosive. It could be deadly. It's right across from campus on the way home. And literally it's that easy. You go online, you order, you walk in, it's sitting on a shelf, you pick it up, you're out the door, and it tells you when your order's ready. And yeah, very good experience actually.
Yeah, and Eric and the folks over there are going to take care of you. Just tell them you saw it on the CougCast if you head over there, and they'll make sure your wings are made the right way, and they'll have them ready for you. Kind of a neat little location there, close to the stadium. Coach, we're going to try to limit your intake. We don't want you to put on any in-season weight here, but Atomic Wings is proud to be our sponsor for this season for the CougCast. So
outstanding, yeah, delicious.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit next about Northern State and what we expect coming up in the Northern State's game. The University of Sioux Falls does play Northern State coming up this Saturday. Northern did lose to South Dakota 45-3 on Thursday night as well. Their head coach, Mike Schmidt, is entering his 5th year at Northern, but his first year was the 2020 year. Didn't play football, so it's his 4th season. Overall, he's got a 45-29 record, including 18-16 at Northern. What do we expect to see from the Wolves this Saturday, Coach?
Well, I'll tell you what, after watching that film against South Dakota, they did some really nice things. And I think that the score is a little bit misleading. I know they had some special teams type stuff, which would be expected. I think the level of athleticism at that level, especially a top 5 program like USD is, was pretty special. The kickoff return, fast guys running one way is tough to defend when you have, trying to catch them. But they had a kickoff return, they had a punt return, and I think they had a misfortunate face mask. Ball hit the face mask, and a kid fumbled the punt. That gave South Dakota the ball inside the 15-yard line. So, really 21 of those 45 points weren't on the defense necessarily. We know how that went just on Thursday night. So, really their defense gave up 24 points to a top 5 team in the country. And I expect them to be very similar to St. Thomas, very stout, very physical. They're going to blitz and pressure. We're going to have to handle all their movement. But yeah, they're definitely solid on defense. And I think offensively, new quarterbacks and new starters, they had some depth stuff going on. And I think they had one injury to a tight end that may keep them out. But overall, I mean, that's a very fast physical defense at USD. And it seemed like they just couldn't get anything going after the first drive. But when they were clicking on all cylinders to start the game, they were very effective. The running back, number 21, is a really good football player. Their quarterback is a transfer kid. I don't think he was there in the spring, but he's an FCS transfer, and he's very mobile. He has phenomenal escapability. And so that's going to be a challenge for us. And they're big up front, and I think they're going to spread us out. Probably a completely different game than what we saw last week, where last week there was a lot of 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, and kind of pounding the football. I think this football team is a lot of RPO, some play action pass. They're going to spread you out with 3 and 4 wide receivers, and I think that'll be a challenge for us on defense. So overall, I think it's going to be a heck of a challenge. The last time USF was up there, I think I want to say maybe it was the opening of Dakota Bank Stadium, but maybe I'm mistaken. But I think it was pretty early in that tenure when that stadium was opened up, and they got all over Sioux Falls. And so the last time I was up there as a coach, we also took a loss when I was with Mankato. We went up there and got beat. So Saturday night in Aberdeen, it's a big time deal. It's a big time environment. Lights are going to be on, and the scoreboard's going to be blaring music. It's going to be a tough environment, probably more difficult than St. Thomas in that, they're right on top of you. It's loud. They'll have a great crowd. Aberdeen does a great job of supporting their programs, and it's going to be exciting, but we're going to have to be prepared. And I don't think we can afford to go in there, sleepwalking into it. And you worry as a coach because you have one win, and we talk about getting our flowers and everyone telling you how great you are because you beat an FCS team and all that. But I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a really difficult opportunity for us to go up there and hopefully get a victory, but we're going to have to play really well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, up in Aberdeen, Saturday, September 7th, kickoff's at 6 o'clock. They do have kind of a festive tailgate scene up there as well. And it's, the weather's supposed to be glorious on Saturday, so head on up, check it out. last time I think I was up there, the pork producers were handing out some free pork burgers or something like that. So, I mean, go check it out. Make some friends, from Aberdeen.
I don't know, they might frown on me trying to get a pork sandwich before the game, but all in all, Mike's done a really good job up there. And, like you said, I've known Mike for a long time. He was the defensive coordinator. We crossed paths quite a bit over the years, and they do a nice job. Obviously, we battle them in recruiting in the state of South Dakota, and I know they take a lot of pride in being from South Dakota and having South Dakota kids, and we're trying to do the same thing here. And so, the classic battle, right? The University of Sioux Falls and Northern State, two in-state institutions that are fighting for bragging rights in the state. It's going to go a long way in recruiting. It goes a long way in our first conference game, first of 10 in a row here. So it's a huge opportunity for us. And, we still need to learn how to win, right? You win one football game, but then how do you put it aside and move forward and get better, right? And set aside all that excitement from winning that game. And we did have a couple extra days here to prepare just because we played on Thursday night as we get into game week preparation. So as a head coach, those are things that concern me, being able to put aside what happened last week and move forward and take it 1 week at a time and just kind of stay true to the process of trying to improve and get better. But I know Mike, I know him well. Those kids will be fired up, and that it's going to be an electric environment. And I hope that our kids can handle it. And we're excited to get up there and see what we're about.
Yeah. If you're not able to make it to the game, you can watch on the NSIC network. Otherwise, I highly recommend this. Tune in on KWSN. There's going to be a 5:30 pregame show. Tom Frederick, Tim Hyatt, this guy named Chad Birger is even planning on making an appearance up there this week. So
nice.
Make sure to tune in. We might not have the sideline technology figured out, but we did a few things last year at Southwest, and so we'll see if we can incorporate some of that stuff with the sideline reporter doing halftime reports or things like that. Coach, I'm looking forward to this week. Hopefully you are too. Any last thoughts about playing Northern State on Saturday?
Not really. I just, we've been working on them now, and obviously they've got a new offensive coordinator, young man that was at Bemidji, played there, Jordan Hine, and Jordan's a really good football coach. I know him pretty well too, and I know he'll have some things oiled up for us. But you could see in the South Dakota game that they had some opportunities. And I guess the thing when I look at that, when you're playing an FCS team like they did, there's probably some talent, right, differential there. And I think what's really hard to tell in the film is how much was it just because USD was bigger or stronger or faster or deeper. And I think what you see on the film is the schematics of what they were doing and the opportunities that were there that maybe the window was a little bit smaller because of the speed and size of South Dakota. Well, I anticipate this week being a little bit more, not quite as maybe big and fast and strong, certainly as USD. We're not. So there will be some things that maybe weren't there on Thursday night for them that would potentially be there this Saturday night. And so it's going to come down to execution and reading our keys and playing physical and tackling well in space and all those things. And it's a great challenge. And for us, after just one game, we've got a long way to go. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got to get better. Whatever happened last week is over. We're moving forward, and now we're in the Northern Sun Conference. And it's easy to get fired up for that one game when you have it all season to prepare for it. Now we got to get ready week in and week out and be able to adapt and change. And then we're going to find out what we're made of on Saturday night.
All right, Coach. We're going to bring back one of the most popular segments from last season, and that's our mailbag segment. So I reached out to several loyal Cougar fans to see if they had any questions for you this year. You look like you're just so thrilled about this segment.
You just never know, right? You give an open mic and you just know what's going to happen. So I'm ready. Let's rock and roll.
All right. Well, Tom from Sioux Falls was wondering what makes you decide whether you are going to throw your challenge flag or not. You talked about your challenge flag earlier. Is it something that you see in the game? Do the coaches, reach down to you over the headset from up above? Like what makes you decide when you are going to throw your challenge flag?
Well, I'll tell you what, I know this is going to sound really scientific, but the reaction of our players on the field is a big part of it. And Garrett was pretty confident on the field that he didn't have control of the football. And so, it's a little bit different rules everywhere, but at least in the U.S. at St. Thomas, if you lose your challenge, then you lose a timeout and the ability to challenge the rest of the way. If you win it, you get to do another challenge. And so I guess my thought was we were a little bit overwhelmed. We were a little bit shell-shocked. It was like, oh, my gosh, this just happened. I threw the challenge flag to slow the game down a little bit to you never know. Obviously you look at the scoreboard, but they're pretty smart up there at St. Thomas. They did not play the replay up on the scoreboard until after the challenge was decided. So you really don't have a chance to look at it on the instant replay inside the stadium. So, the biggest thing is the players' reaction. It was so far away, it was hard to tell. I figured it was a long shot, but I was like, okay, let's, if there's a chance that we can win this challenge, we can kind of catch our breath. And now it's not 7-0 a minute and a half into the game. So that was the biggest reason. And honestly, moving forward, I have no idea. I didn't even bring a flag up there. I had to borrow a flag from them because I wasn't even really thinking about it too much. But now that we're in conference games, we've got the challenge situation set up again. It'll be a tent in the end zone. And so, I would say that's how we'll look at it. And if the coaches see something on the iPads after the play, they might radio down and say, hey, listen, we got to challenge this. But, I'd love to tell you it's more scientific than that, but that's kind of the reality of it.
Well, the next question that we have is from Twitterless Jeff. And Twitterless Jeff was wondering, you talked a little bit about the weather delay. When you have those, indeterminate weather delays, how hard is it as a head coach to deal with those situations where no one really knows what's going to happen, but you have all these players and coaches looking to you for what should I be doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, and they were kind enough. I'll say St. Thomas was awesome as far as how they took care of us. They set us up with complimentary tickets and all that kind of stuff. And they actually had opened up their competition gym for us to kind of leak into off the locker room because the locker rooms weren't very big and they weren't very spacious. And we did take quite a few extra guys because there was no travel roster limit for a non-conference game. So we had about 73 guys in the travel roster. Normally in the league, it's about 58. So we had about 15 extra guys with us. So that's a lot of crowded space, and you don't want the guys to feel cooped up. And so, we had eaten at 2:00, and so we did go to Target. There was a Target locally, and we went and probably way overpaid. I'm sure my budget's not going to like it very much, but we overpaid for some beef jerky and some cheese sticks and some fruit. And you just try to keep the kids relaxed. I didn't want to make them all uptight. We didn't do a bunch of walkthroughs or meetings. I just said, hey, take out your phone, check out what's going on, just kind of relax and hang out, and I'll let you know when I know more. And that was kind of what it was, because every time there's a lightning strike, you have to push it back another 30 minutes. And so we didn't really know when it was going to start. We had kind of shot for 8:00, but that was just kind of a big picture thought. And we had created our schedule based on an 8:00 kickoff. And then I saw St. Thomas was dressing and getting ready to go. And I'm like, man, we should probably start getting taped up here and all that. And so, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And you can make a lot of excuses of why you play well or don't play well because of weather. But at the end of the day, we both had to deal with it. And fortunately for us, it didn't seem to play that much of a factor.
All right, Coach. I'll let you off pretty easy this week with that as our concluding mailbag question.
Nice.
What we'll do, we will make sure to see you this Saturday up at Northern State, 6:00 kickoff. Make sure if you're heading up to the game, do so. If not, tune in on the NSIC network or KWSN. Coach Glow, I'm going to wrap up here by looking at or doing a quick read for the Sioux Football Legacy Association. The Sioux Legacy Association can be found at www.siouxlegacy.com. The mission of the Sioux Football Legacy Association is to bring alumni, family, friends, and supporters together to help equip the USF football program with the resources necessary to continue its winning legacy. Visit siouxlegacy.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the QR code on the screen and check out their website. All right, Coach, any final wisdom as we get ready to depart for this week?
Nope, not really. Just excited to be 1-0 and looking forward to hopefully go 1-0 again on Saturday.
All right. Well, it's a good show. I'm looking forward to Saturday as well. So hopefully we're ready to rock and the team's ready to rock and roll on Saturday, and I will see you up there.
Sounds great, man. I appreciate it.
All right. I'm your host, Chad Birger. Thanks for tuning in today. Until next time, go Cougars.